Every man who has ever tasted even the smallest measure of greatness has known the battle between discipline and desire. Discipline is the steel of achievement. It is the willpower that holds a man steady when storms rise, the anchor that prevents him from drifting into the shallow waters of regret. And yet, desire is the fire that moves a man forward. Desire is the spark that transforms barren land into fertile harvest, that transforms an ordinary heart into one that beats with vision and courage. Without discipline, a man becomes reckless. Without desire, he becomes empty. The true test of a man's greatness lies in how he balances these two mighty forces, and nowhere is this conflict more profound than in the presence of another human being who awakens the deepest longings of his soul. Every man who has ever tasted even the smallest measure of greatness has known the battle between discipline and desire. Discipline is the steel of achievement. It is the willpower that holds a man steady when storms rise, the anchor that prevents him from drifting into the shallow waters of regret. And yet, desire is the fire that moves a man forward. Desire is the spark that transforms barren land into fertile harvest, that transforms an ordinary heart into one that beats with vision and courage. Without discipline, a man becomes reckless. Without desire, he becomes empty. The true test of a man's greatness lies in how he balances these two mighty forces, and nowhere is this conflict more profound than in the presence of another human being who awakens the deepest longings of his soul. I have walked through many trials where discipline was my shield. In the lonely hours of the Wild West, when the night stretched cold and the coyotes howled at the moon, discipline told me to keep watch, to remain calm, to hold steady the rifle in my hand. I have faced hunger when the belly cried for food, and discipline reminded me that hunger could not conquer the spirit of a man who had work to do. I have stared into the eyes of men who wished me harm, and discipline gave me the courage to stand unshaken. I learned early that discipline is the very foundation upon which strength is built. And yet, I also learned that no matter how strong the foundation, there comes a force that can shake it to its very core. That force is desire. It is invisible, but it is stronger than chains. It cannot be weighed, yet it outweighs the heaviest burdens a man can carry. Desire has brought empires into existence, has driven explorers into uncharted lands, and has lifted ordinary men into immortality. But desire has also destroyed kings, crumbled dynasties, and led even the strongest to ruin. Desire is the horse that pulls you forward with unstoppable force, discipline is the reins that keep it from running wild. And when you stand before someone whose presence awakens both your deepest hunger and your greatest fear, you begin to understand how fragile the balance truly is. When I confess, I can't control myself around you, it is not a declaration of weakness but an acknowledgement of the power of desire. I know discipline as well as I know the desert sun, yet in your presence, discipline feels like a rope fraying at the edges, unable to hold back the wild stallion of my heart. This is the eternal conflict every man faces, the need to remain master of himself while confronting the temptation to surrender to longing. And it is in this very struggle that greatness or ruin is decided. Let me tell you this truth, no man has ever achieved anything worth remembering without first being shaken by desire. Discipline alone builds order, but it does not create. Desire alone fuels dreams, but without direction, it destroys. Together, these forces shape destiny. And in this, you, my love, are both my greatest test and my greatest opportunity. For in desiring you, I discover what it means to confront the very limits of my self-control. And in fighting to maintain that control, I grow stronger than I have ever been. Think of the man who builds his fortune. At first, he disciplines himself to rise early, to work when others sleep, to sacrifice pleasure for progress. But then comes desire for comfort, for recognition, for the touch of a hand that makes the work worthwhile. If he lets desire consume him without discipline, he squanders his fortune. But if he suppresses desire entirely, he finds himself rich in wealth but poor in spirit. The secret is not in destroying desire but in mastering it. The secret is not in silencing the heart but in training it to serve a higher purpose. Here we move to key point 2, respect beyond desire, and expand it in the deep, motivational, and persuasive voice of Napoleon Hill, flowing as one long continuous piece without headings. This will aim to bring out the tension, passion, and higher principles that separate lust from love, discipline from surrender, and respect from recklessness. There is a kind of power that transcends mere hunger. It is not the reckless reaching of a man for what he wants without thought for consequence. It is not the selfish grasping of hands that take and leave behind nothing but ruin. The power I speak of is the power that grows when a man looks into the eyes of the one he desires and knows, deep within his soul, that he must love her in a way that honors her worth, even when every fiber of his being aches to forget honor and surrender to impulse. Respect beyond desire, that is where the line between greatness and destruction is drawn. For without respect, desire is a flame that devours; with respect, desire becomes the fire that forges destiny. I have seen men lose themselves in the rush of passion. Out here in the frontier, I have witnessed cowboys who chased the thrill of the moment, men who gave themselves over to impulse, thinking that desire was all there was. Their eyes glowed with fire for a night, and in the morning, their souls were ash. I learned quickly that to chase desire without respect is to ride a wild horse straight over the cliff. There is no mastery there, only ruin. But when a man desires a woman and yet holds her in reverence, when he looks upon her not as a prize to be taken but as a queen to be honored, then that desire ceases to be a force of destruction and becomes the highest motivator of all. Let me speak plainly. A woman of dignity demands more than your hunger. She demands your discipline, your patience, your loyalty, your willingness to hold back the very strength that surges in your blood. She does not bend to the will of a man who seeks to consume her; she responds to the man who seeks to protect her even from himself. That is what separates the weak from the strong. The weak man cannot control his impulses. He confuses lust with love and takes without giving. The strong man trembles with the same fire, but he transforms that fire into a beacon. He lets his desire fuel his growth. He lets his passion make him stronger, more determined, more honorable. It is a strange truth that the more respect you give to your desire, the more powerful it becomes. For respect is not restraint alone, it is recognition. It is the ability to see her not only as the object of your longing but as the soul who can shape your destiny. It is the realization that she is not here to be conquered but to be cherished. When a man understands this, he elevates himself. He stops being a slave to his passion and becomes the master of it. And in that mastery, he earns the only kind of love that lasts. Respect beyond desire is the secret key to fulfillment. If you want proof, look to the stories of men who have risen to greatness not by indulging every whim but by controlling themselves in the presence of their strongest temptations. Look to the leader who wanted power but respected the people enough to wield it with justice. Look to the artist who longed for beauty but respected his craft enough to perfect it before he revealed it. Look to the lover who burned with passion but respected his beloved enough to wait until his love could provide her more than fleeting comfort. In every case, it is respect that turned desire into destiny. And so, when I stand before you and confess that I cannot control myself, I do not mean that I would dishonor you with reckless abandon. I mean that my longing for you is so great that it shakes the very walls of my discipline, yet even in that trembling, there is reverence. I want you, but I want you rightly. I want you, but I want to deserve you. I want you, but I would rather break myself into pieces than break your dignity. This is the paradox of true passion. It does not destroy, it builds. It does not consume, it elevates. It does not demand, it honors. When a man learns to respect beyond desire, he rises above the animals of impulse and takes his rightful place as a creator of his own destiny. Respect turns longing into love, fire into light, and hunger into strength. Respect is what makes a man not just a lover but a partner, not just a dreamer but a builder. And in the silence of the night, when the stars scatter across the western sky, I whisper to myself the truth I have come to know: the greatest test of any man is not whether he can feel desire, but whether he can respect it enough to transform it into something eternal. There is no force more compelling in this world than the strength of a woman who knows her own worth. You may look at the mountains rising proud against the horizon and call them unshakable. You may watch the rivers carve through stone and call them unstoppable. You may feel the heat of the sun and call it unrelenting. Yet all of these powers pale beside the quiet, steady, and unyielding strength of a woman who has chosen to stand tall, to live by her dignity, and to command respect by the sheer force of her presence. When such a woman steps into your life, she does not merely inspire desire, she demands transformation. She becomes a mirror, revealing to you who you are and who you must become if you would dare to be worthy of her love. I have seen men wrestle cattle to the ground, hold pistols steady at 20 paces, and endure winters so harsh that the earth itself seemed to rebel against them. But the strength of the body, the skill of the hand, the courage of the lone rider, these are but shadows compared to the endurance of a woman who carries her pain with grace, who carries her hope with fire, and who walks forward in a world that tries to chain her down, yet never succeeds. This is not the fragile beauty of porcelain that cracks under pressure. This is the beauty of iron, the beauty of storms, the beauty of roots that grow deeper the more they are tested. A man may desire such a woman with all the burning in his heart, but if his desire is shallow, it will collapse against her strength. She does not bend for mere passion. She does not yield to fleeting flattery. She does not mistake hunger for honor. No, her strength demands more from the man who dares to approach her. It demands that he become bigger than his impulses, broader than his fears, stronger than his excuses. For her strength does not weaken him, it exposes him. It strips away the false bravado, the empty promises, the shallow courage. It asks him, are you truly a man, or are you only pretending? You see, a woman's strength is not measured in the noise of her defiance but in the quiet consistency of her endurance. It is in the way she rises again and again when life has knocked her down. It is in the way she holds on to dignity when others try to take it from her. It is in the way she dares to love even when love has cost her before. Such strength is not born in ease. It is forged in fire, in hardship, in loss, in the heavy burden of carrying herself with grace when the world tells her she is unworthy. And when you stand before such strength, you realize that you are not dealing with a passing fancy, you are dealing with destiny itself. A weak man might shrink from this strength. He might see it as a challenge to his pride, an affront to his power. He might seek to break it, to diminish it, to mold it into something smaller so he can feel bigger. But a wise man, a man who seeks greatness, will honor this strength. He will bow not in weakness but in respect. He will realize that the strength of such a woman is not his enemy but his ally, not his burden but his blessing. For in loving a woman of strength, he learns to strengthen himself. He learns to rise to her level. He learns that true partnership is not dominance but harmony, not control but respect, not conquest but creation. I have felt this truth in the marrow of my bones. In the presence of her, I am shaken, not because she diminishes me, but because she demands the best of me. Her eyes tell me there is no room for cowardice, no room for excuses, no room for weakness dressed up as masculinity. Her very existence calls me to dig deeper into myself, to refine my discipline, to expand my vision, to become more than I have ever been. That is the gift of her strength. It does not leave me as I am, it compels me to evolve. Think of the great builders of history, the men who carved civilizations from wilderness, the leaders who carried nations on their shoulders, the dreamers who turned visions into reality. Do you believe they did it alone? No. Behind them, beside them, often leading them, were women of strength whose courage, resilience, and faith created the foundation upon which greatness could be built. A man can carry heavy loads, but it is often the woman's strength that carries the weight of the unseen, the emotional, the spiritual. And when a man recognizes this, when he bows to the truth that her strength is the equal partner of his, he steps into a higher plane of life. There are men who fear such women because they cannot control them. But hear me well, a woman of strength is not meant to be controlled. She is meant to be cherished, respected, and celebrated. Her independence is not rebellion, it is the song of a soul that refuses to be broken. Her fire is not danger, it is the flame that lights the path for those who dare to walk beside her. Her strength is not a threat, it is the foundation upon which true love, true respect, and true partnership are built. And so I confess that when I say I cannot control myself around you, part of that confession is awe. I am in awe of your strength. I am in awe of the way you hold yourself when the world tries to diminish you. I am in awe of the way you carry burdens silently, the way you smile even when the weight of life should crush you, the way you stand tall when others bow. You are stronger than the desert, fiercer than the frontier, more enduring than the wilderness. And in that strength, you awaken in me the realization that love is not about possession, it is about reverence. The man who learns to honor the strength of a woman learns the greatest lesson of all, that power shared is power multiplied. He learns that together, their combined strength can overcome obstacles that neither could face alone. He learns that respect is the soil in which love takes root, and that love built on respect cannot be destroyed by time, hardship, or the judgment of others. So let the world talk, let them whisper about lines that should not be crossed, about boundaries set by prejudice and fear. I know this, your strength silences their voices. Your strength breaks their chains. Your strength demands a love that does not hide, does not cower, does not apologize. And I will rise to meet it, because to love a woman of strength is not a burden, it is the greatest privilege a man can ever know. The greatest chains that bind men and women are not forged from iron, but from opinion. They are not locked by steel, but by the judgment of others. Throughout history, the voices of society have whispered and shouted, telling people who they may love, what lines they may cross, and what boundaries they must not trespass. And too often, men and women have bowed to those voices, allowing their dreams to wither and their hearts to grow silent. But understand this truth, no man or woman has ever found greatness by conforming to the fears of others. Greatness belongs to those who dare to love in defiance of judgment, who dare to honor the call of the heart even when the world condemns it, who dare to embrace love as a law higher than prejudice, higher than tradition, higher than the prison of narrow minds. When I stand and declare my feelings for you, I am not only fighting my own weakness, I am fighting centuries of chains. I am confronting the eyes that watch us with suspicion, the mouths that whisper against us, the minds that cannot comprehend that love cares nothing for color, nothing for status, nothing for the invisible lines men have drawn to separate themselves. Love is the most natural of all laws. It is the language of creation, the principle that unites stars and rivers and human souls. Yet men, in their ignorance, attempt to rewrite its rules, to confine it within the walls of their prejudice. But love cannot be imprisoned. Love cannot be silenced. Love cannot be legislated by the narrow. Love belongs to the brave. I know what it means to walk into a room and feel the weight of eyes that disapprove. I know the sting of whispers that cut sharper than knives. I know the isolation that comes when society decides you have broken its unspoken rules. And yet, every time I see you, I know that those whispers are powerless compared to the truth of what we share. Their judgment may bruise the skin, but it cannot touch the soul. Their disapproval may build fences, but it cannot contain the force of two hearts determined to be together. It is not the world's permission I seek, it is your hand, your trust, your love. And in that, I find more power than all the voices of society combined. History is filled with men and women who bowed to the weight of judgment, who gave up love to win the approval of others. And history has forgotten them. But it remembers those who defied the crowd, who held each other when the world tried to pull them apart, who chose love over conformity. Think of the heroes who dared to stand together when their union was forbidden, who endured ridicule, persecution, even exile, but whose love endured and in the end changed the world. Every advance in human freedom was born not of submission, but of defiance. Every great love story that has stood the test of time is a story of defiance against judgment. And so, when I look at you, I see not only the woman I love, but the chance to write such a story not of cowardice, but of courage, not of conformity, but of truth. The weak man fears judgment. He crumbles under the weight of what others think. He shapes his life not by his own values, but by the shifting winds of gossip and prejudice. He may live comfortably in the approval of the many, but he dies in the regret of the unlived. The strong man, however, knows that judgment is only the echo of fear. He knows that the voices of society are not the voice of truth. He knows that to follow his heart with honor is worth more than to follow the crowd with cowardice. And so he stands tall, even when alone, because he knows that love rooted in respect is stronger than the mob rooted in ignorance. Let us not pretend that the path of defiance is easy. To choose love against judgment is to invite struggle. It is to walk into rooms where silence greets you like an enemy. It is to endure the stares of those who believe themselves righteous while they poison their own hearts with hatred. It is to fight the doubts that creep in when the weight of the world presses down. But know this, every struggle endured in the defense of love makes that love stronger. Every trial faced together binds the hearts closer. Every insult survived becomes proof that what you have is not weak, but unbreakable. For love that has never been tested is unproven, but love that survives judgment is immortal. Society will always try to dictate the terms of love, because society fears what it cannot control. It fears the union of souls that defy its categories, because such unions reveal that the boundaries were illusions all along. When a cowboy and a black woman in the Wild West stand together, loving each other openly, they shatter not only prejudice but the very lie that people can be divided by race, by station, by tradition. They reveal that love is the ultimate equalizer, the ultimate revolution. And for this reason, society resists it because it threatens the false order it has built. But love that dares to stand in the light becomes a torch, and once lit, that torch can never be extinguished. And so, when I warn you that I cannot control myself around you, it is not a warning of danger to you, but of danger to the world we inhabit. For our love will not stay hidden. It cannot remain silent. It will rise up, and in rising, it will offend the small-minded, the fearful, the judgmental. But let them be offended. Let them whisper until their throats are dry. Let them build fences that cannot contain us. For I know this truth, no chain forged by men can bind what heaven itself has joined. No opinion, no prejudice, no law of men can destroy what is rooted in the law of the heart. I would rather endure the scorn of 1,000 tongues than live without your love. I would rather walk through the desert of isolation than bask in the acceptance of those who despise the truth. I would rather be judged by the world and found guilty of love than judged by my own heart and found guilty of cowardice. For what is a man's worth if he lives to please the crowd but dies having betrayed himself? What is a life worth if it is built on the foundation of fear, not truth? To love you openly, fiercely, and respectfully is to declare that I will no longer be ruled by the judgment of others. It is to declare that my destiny is not theirs to dictate. It is to declare that love is stronger than fear, stronger than prejudice, stronger than every barrier they place in our path. And I believe that one day, their judgment will fade, but our love will remain, shining like the stars that outlast every storm. So let us walk together, not in shame, but in pride. Let us hold our heads high, not in defiance of their hatred alone, but in affirmation of our love. Let us write a story that generations to come will remember, not because it pleased the crowd, but because it defied them. And in that defiance, we will show the truth that love, when honored and respected, when held with courage, when lived without apology, is the greatest power the human heart can know. When a man warns a woman that he cannot control himself around her, the world may misinterpret his words. They may think it is a threat, an admission of weakness, or even the foreshadowing of recklessness. But in truth, when those words are spoken with sincerity and respect, they are not a threat at all, they are a confession. They are the laying bare of the soul, the unmasking of a man who has tried with every ounce of his discipline to stand firm, and yet who trembles because he has discovered in her something stronger than his will. It is not a declaration of danger to her, but of vulnerability in himself. It is not the cry of a predator, but the whisper of a man whose heart has been stripped of its defenses. Understand this, the strongest man is not the one who never trembles, never falters, never bends. The strongest man is the one who admits when his soul is moved, when his guard is broken, when his pride is humbled by the presence of someone who awakens in him a deeper truth. To confess that he cannot control himself is to acknowledge that desire has risen in him like a storm, that longing has swept through him like fire, and yet that he respects her enough to admit it openly instead of hiding it under deception. The warning is not about harm, it is about honesty. And honesty is the foundation of every bond that endures. Too often men hide behind masks. They disguise their emotions with bravado, their fears with silence, their desires with games. They believe that to confess their true feelings is to show weakness, that to admit their trembling is to surrender their power. But let me tell you, there is no greater strength than the courage to confess. For confession is not surrender, it is clarity. It is the man standing before the woman and saying, I will not deceive you. I will not pretend to be untouched by you. I will not hide what your presence does to me. I will not wrap my longing in lies. I will tell you the truth, even if it exposes me, even if it humbles me, even if it reveals that I am not as controlled as I wish to appear. That, my friends, is not weakness. That is the beginning of true strength. A warning spoken as a confession is an act of reverence. It is a way of placing the truth in her hands and saying, I trust you with this knowledge of me. It is the recognition that she has power, not because he gives it to her, but because her very existence has awakened it. It is the understanding that respect demands transparency. A man who hides his deepest fire will sooner or later be consumed by it. But a man who confesses it can harness it, shape it, and transform it into something higher than desire alone. Consider how rare such honesty is in this world. People walk through life concealing themselves, presenting masks that win them approval but cost them authenticity. They smile when they ache inside, flatter when they feel envy, pretend indifference when they burn with longing. And so they live half-lives, afraid to be known, afraid to reveal the storm inside them. But the man who dares to confess, I cannot control myself around you, refuses the mask. He would rather risk rejection than live in dishonesty. He would rather be known and vulnerable than unknown and safe. And in that risk lies the seed of greatness. For confession is the soil where trust grows. A woman who hears the truth, even when it is raw and trembling, will know she stands before a man who values her enough to be real. She will know that his passion is not hidden in the shadows but brought into the light, where it can be examined, honored, and guided. She will know that he does not seek to manipulate her with silence or games, but to invite her into the truth of his heart. This is what transforms desire into dignity, longing into love, fire into light. The world often warns men against vulnerability. It tells them that to confess is to lose power, to expose is to risk ridicule. But the world is wrong. The man who dares to confess becomes freer than those who conceal. He no longer carries the weight of secrets. He no longer exhausts himself maintaining masks. He no longer lives in the prison of his own silence. Instead, he stands naked in the truth, and in that nakedness, he becomes invincible. For no ridicule can harm a man who has already embraced his own vulnerability. No rejection can destroy a man who has already declared himself without shame. Confession transforms weakness into strength because it converts what could have been a hidden chain into an open choice. Now, let us look deeper into what it means to confess in love. It means to acknowledge that desire has shaken your composure, but that respect holds you steady. It means to admit that her presence makes you restless, but that your restlessness will not dishonor her. It means to reveal that she has awakened in you a hunger for closeness, but that you will not feed that hunger without her consent, her trust, her willingness. Such a confession is not about taking, it is about waiting. It is not about control, it is about surrender. And in that surrender lies the truest form of control, for only the man who confesses his fire can guide it, the man who denies it is consumed. There is power in speaking aloud what burns within. The moment a man says, I cannot control myself around you, he takes that fire from the shadows of his mind and places it in the light of shared understanding. He acknowledges not only his own longing but her sovereignty. He says, in effect, you have this effect on me. I honor it, I admit it, and I put the knowledge of it in your hands. I will not pretend to be unshaken, but I will show you that I respect you enough to let you see the truth of my trembling. That is not a threat to her safety, it is a tribute to her power. Do not confuse confession with weakness. Weakness hides, deceives, manipulates. Weakness makes promises it cannot keep and plays games it cannot sustain. Confession does the opposite. It shines light into the darkness. It builds bridges of honesty. It says, here I am, without disguise, without armor, without excuse. If you would have me as I am. And if you would not, let me at least know that I spoke the truth. That is not weakness. That is the raw courage upon which all lasting love is built. And so I say to you, my beloved, when I warn you that I cannot control myself around you, I am not warning you of danger, I am confessing the depth of my respect. I am showing you that I will not hide behind false calm. I am revealing that your presence has awakened in me a storm, but that the storm will be guided by my reverence for you. My words are not the growl of a beast, they are the trembling voice of a man who has finally understood what it means to be stripped of pretense. Let the world misunderstand. Let them twist confession into threat, vulnerability into weakness, truth into folly. Let them whisper and sneer. For I know this, the path of concealment leads to ruin, but the path of confession leads to freedom. And in freedom lies love, respect, and the possibility of greatness. I would rather confess and be misunderstood than remain silent and be consumed. I would rather speak and risk rejection than hide and lose myself. Confession transforms love because it transforms the man. A man who confesses learns humility. He learns that he is not the unshakable tower he once thought, but a being of flesh, of fire, of longing. And in learning humility, he becomes more human, more real, more capable of love. He becomes the kind of man who no longer needs to pretend, the kind of man who can stand before a woman with empty hands and still be strong, because his strength is no longer in appearances, it is in truth. And so I urge you, never fear confession. For though it may shake you, though it may expose you, though it may humble you, it will also free you. To confess is to live honestly. To confess is to love purely. To confess is to respect both yourself and the one you love enough to place the truth in the open. And in that truth, love finds its foundation. For there can be no love where there is deception, but where there is confession, love grows stronger than judgment, stronger than fear, stronger than the storms that rage against it. There comes a time in every man's journey where all the strength he has gathered, all the walls he has built, all the defenses he has forged with years of discipline and control collapse under the weight of something greater than himself. That time is not when he is defeated by an enemy, nor when he is weakened by age, nor when he is crushed by circumstance. That moment comes when he looks into the eyes of the one who has awakened within him a power he cannot resist and a longing he cannot deny. And in that moment, surrender is not a failure, it is a transformation. For surrender is the bridge between the man he was and the man he is called to become. You may ask, why is surrender necessary? Why must a man give up control to discover his true self? The answer lies in the very nature of life itself. Control is an illusion. We spend years believing we can master everything: our thoughts, our desires, our future, our fate. We tighten our grip, we plan, we guard, we calculate. And yet, at the hour of truth, we discover that the things which shape us most are the things we cannot control. The sunrise we did not command. The loss we did not expect. The opportunity we did not plan for. The love that walked into our lives without permission. These are the forces that mold us into something greater. They arrive uninvited, they overwhelm our carefully built order, and they demand surrender. And when we surrender, we are transformed. A man who surrenders to love is not weaker than the one who resists it. He is stronger. For resistance is the posture of fear. It is the armor of the insecure. It is the stance of the man who would rather remain caged in his small certainties than step into the vast unknown of desire, trust, and vulnerability. But surrender requires courage. Surrender says, I will risk being broken in order to be made whole. I will risk being seen in order to be truly known. I will risk losing my old self in order to find the man I was destined to become. That is not cowardice. That is the highest form of bravery. In surrender, a man gives up not his dignity but his pride. He lays down not his strength but his fear. He abandons not his honor but his illusion of control. And what does he receive in return? He receives freedom. Freedom from the prison of pretense. Freedom from the burden of masks. Freedom from the exhausting effort of always appearing unshakable. In surrender, he can finally breathe, finally feel, finally be. And in being, he is transformed. Think of the seed that surrenders to the soil. Alone, it is hard, small, limited. But when it surrenders, when it allows itself to be broken open, to lose the form it once held, it becomes a tree that touches the sky. Think of the river that surrenders to the ocean. Alone, it is confined by its banks, limited by its course. But when it surrenders, it becomes part of the vastness, the endless depth, the infinite power of the sea. So it is with man. When he surrenders to love, to longing, to the truth of his own heart, he loses the smallness of who he was and becomes part of something immeasurable. Do not misunderstand surrender. It is not the blind giving up of will. It is not the abandonment of self. True surrender is conscious, deliberate, chosen. It is the man saying, I see the cost, I know the risk, and I embrace it fully. That choice is what transforms him. For forced surrender breeds bitterness, but chosen surrender breeds freedom. And only the man who chooses can be truly transformed. When a man tells a woman that he cannot control himself around her, and when he reaches the moment where he no longer resists that truth, he is standing at the threshold of surrender. He has fought his own heart, battled his own longing, tried to cage the fire that burns within him. But the cage has shattered. The fire has escaped. The battle has ended. And instead of fearing defeat, he discovers that in the surrender lies victory. For he has won the freedom to feel without shame, to desire without pretense, to love without condition. That is transformation. The transformation is not only in his heart, it is in his spirit. For in surrender, he becomes more than himself. He becomes a vessel through which truth can flow. No longer hiding, no longer deceiving, no longer resisting, he is open. And openness is power. The closed man cannot grow, cannot connect, cannot love. But the open man, though vulnerable, though breakable, is alive in a way the closed man never was. His surrender does not destroy him, it resurrects him. He is reborn in the fire of his own honesty. You may notice that the world celebrates control. It praises the man who is unmoved, unbent, untouched by longing. It calls him disciplined, respectable, admirable. But look closely. The man who never surrenders is not free, he is imprisoned. His control is his chain. His composure is his cage. His coldness is his death. What good is it to stand tall if you are empty inside? What value is there in appearing strong if you never live? No, my friends, the man who truly lives is the man who dares to surrender when surrender is demanded of him. For only he will taste the depth of love, the fullness of freedom, the richness of life. Transformation through surrender is not instant, it is a journey. At first, he resists, for his pride clings to control. Then he fears, for his ego whispers that surrender is weakness. But finally, he sees that resistance only deepens his suffering, that fear only imprisons his soul. And in that moment of clarity, he lets go. He releases the need to command. He accepts the truth of his desire. He embraces the power of his vulnerability. And in doing so, he rises into a new self. The man who feared surrender becomes the man transformed by it. This surrender is not just for him, it is for her as well. For when he confesses, when he yields, when he stands before her with nothing but the truth of his trembling, he gives her a gift greater than any promise, any possession, any protection. He gives her himself, unguarded and real. He says, "Here I am, without disguise. Here I am, without control. Here I am, surrendered not because I am weak, but because I am willing. I choose this. I choose you." And in that choice, in that surrender, love is born. The transformation that follows is the making of a man. For before surrender, he was divided, part of him longing, part of him resisting. Before surrender, he was restless, fighting himself, hiding from her, pretending before the world. Before surrender, he was incomplete, holding back what was most true in him. But after surrender, he is whole. After surrender, he is at peace. After surrender, he is not divided, not restless, not incomplete. He is one within himself. And unity within the self is the foundation of greatness. For what is greatness if not wholeness? A divided man cannot lead, cannot love, cannot live fully. But a whole man, a man transformed by surrender, can move mountains. He can love without fear, give without calculation, live without regret. His surrender has made him free, and his freedom has made him powerful. That is the paradox of life: what you cling to, you lose; what you surrender, you gain. The man who clings to control loses himself, the man who surrenders to love gains a life richer than control could ever offer. And so I tell you, the moment of surrender is the moment of transformation. It is the death of pride and the birth of truth. It is the fall of the old self and the rise of the new. It is the crossing of a threshold beyond which life is no longer half-lived but fully embraced. The man who surrenders becomes the man he was always meant to be, not the stone tower, not the iron wall, not the untouchable figure of control, but the living, breathing, loving soul who dares to be seen, to be moved, to be changed. That is greatness. That is freedom. That is love. And when he stands before her, confessing, trembling, surrendering, he does not diminish, he ascends. For in her presence, he has discovered not the end of his strength but the beginning of it. He has discovered that the greatest power is not in control but in surrender, not in hiding but in revealing, not in resisting but in embracing. He has discovered that the man who surrenders is the man who transforms, and the man who transforms is the man who lives.